Representative Cory Mills has been there and done that. He's done thousands of personal security details. He's able to call a spade, and he's not a conspiracy theorist. He's actually a pretty like buttoned up member of Congress. But at CNN, like he's saying something that's probably made him persona non grata on their network going forward because they're like, please don't mention the obvious. Trump shooter, next story, had 3 overseas encrypted accounts, allegedly, according to a congressman. I consider this to be very suspect and maybe psychological warfare to lead back into their Iran agenda. Next story is this person was on the range with the shooter. 2 people, him and the shooter, in a firearms class, handguns, apparently in June. So this guy who just tried to schwack the president was training with a former U.S. military person, Air Force. So don't take it too seriously, but they were training together at the course, and the FBI called the guy and said, you were in the course with the shooter. Can we interview you? So I want to put that on the record. And then authorities still searching for that motive. We'll go to Channel 9 in Syracuse, which is just a couple hours north of Butler County in Pennsylvania. All right, let's go to this media block and get these pieces on the record so we can get to the interesting analytical forensic stuff that you're going to enjoy.
Now let's look at some of the reaction to what happened on Saturday, because most people who are kind-hearted have been praying for Donald Trump and for his family, because what happened on Saturday was absolutely shocking. But unfortunately, that's not the reaction we are seeing from everyone. Let's take a look.
Do you condemn the shooter shooting Donald Trump?
No. Not here, not on this program, not in front of these people. Absolutely.
You do not condemn a deranged shooter shooting Donald Trump.
You are truly just a child. This is not.
Actually, it's not. No, you know what, Charlie?
We're just trying to be decent human beings.
You know what, Charlie? It's not actually the behaviour of a child. It's the behaviour of somebody who's completely lost his moral compass.
And how charming is this person who said they are sad that the shooter missed?
Absolutely. You guys are out here on the heels of the attempted Trump assassination. Can I get your reaction to what happened the other day?
Well, it's a shame the person missed, but it's ironic that the shooter was also a Republican.
Brad, I see that and I feel really shocked, and I feel conflicted about even playing it on this show, because I don't want to give them airtime, but at the same time we have to call this out, because there is a real dangerous tone that exists where people don't see Donald Trump as a human being anymore. I've had hate mail for standing up for the fact that he wasn't killed on Saturday. It is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. And the irony is not lost on me that the second person you showed has the rainbow bandana around her face. So much love, so much tolerance, so much progress, right? I mean, look, you have to be sick and twisted to want to see your political opponents die. And we're not just even talking about Trump, though, of course, that applies to him. We're talking about an innocent man who was killed in the background, literally shielding his children with his body from bullets. A man who was a father, who was a volunteer firefighter, lost his life. And you have people like Destiny, the liberal YouTuber with millions of followers that you played in that clip there. You have them basically saying they don't care because they support Trump and Trump really bad. And to me, it's sick and it's twisted. It shows that how tribalism and partisanship can rot and corrode not just one's brain, but also one's soul. Because if you become, and they say, well, Republicans won't condemn political violence, and that might be true for some Republicans out there, but it's literally kindergarten level morality. 2 wrongs don't make a right. And you're not supposed to descend into the mud with people and become everything you say you're against. But that's what we're seeing. That is what we're seeing some people do after this tragedy. I mean, are we really at the point where people can't just condemn an attempted assassination?
Yeah.
Your moral compass is just broken beyond repair if you find yourself in that situation. Although I am grateful that I would say most mainstream Democrats have, of course, and this is an extremely low bar. Like, I can't believe we're even here. But most mainstream Democrats, in terms of elected officials, have condemned the shooting and wished Trump well. And
More questions this morning over the security failures that allowed Thomas Crooks to get a direct shot at former President Trump on Saturday. Sources tell Fox News that Butler Township police flagged the Secret Service over a lack of manpower near the building that Crooks scaled and shot from. A New York Post headline says, quote, Trump rally shooter Thomas Crooks tracked ex-president's appearances for months. 3 people were shot at the rally, 1 fatally. Right now in Pennsylvania, private funeral underway for Cory Mills. The volunteer fire chief died while shielding his family in the crowd. Let's bring in Kara Frederick, former DOD counterterrorism analyst. And Kara, the big question in this investigation is how in the world that rooftop was left uncovered. In the world of the Secret Service and presidential campaign events, it is an absolute no-no for an elevated platform with line of sight to where the president is going to be to remain either unblocked or unprotected. Do you have any theories as to what might have happened?
No, I think we're clearly not getting the full picture here because, as you intimated, this is physical security 101. And the fact that that rooftop was not secured is a massive oversight. So in terms of theorizing on what happened, it is critical for a security plan to have your local law enforcement, to have your state officials, and to have your federal authorities all coordinating. It appears that there was some sort of lapse in coordination here. But what I think
I got a phone call while I was driving. I said, who is it? And they said, this is the field office for the Pittsburgh FBI. And I'm, okay, hello. How can I help you? And they said, well, you had taken a class at the Keystone Shooting Center, and the person that you were in the class with was the person that had shot Donald Trump. When I went for the class, I was surprised that the class was only one other person and me. He was quite young, very quiet, seemed friendly, nice kid. So we went into the range and each took our booths. We were right next to each other, and he had already was loaded and firing before I had gotten my gun even loaded. So I was kind of surprised at that, you know. And so I figured he was experienced. And he ended up doing better than me because on the further distances, he had shot one area so many times that it blew out a hole in the target. Towards the end of the classroom discussion, you know, when we really kind of ran out of training stuff to talk about, we started talking about other things. And eventually I got into politics. He wasn't saying anything. He remained quiet. So I was kind of, you know, waiting to see what this guy would do because it was getting a little tense there, and he never said a word. He just sat there, kind of smiled, looked, and didn't say anything. So I was surprised at that, you know, not knowing what was going to happen, you know, in the future. But even then, I was kind of like, you know, how come this guy isn't saying anything, yay or nay? You know? I couldn't believe it. I couldn't even have a conversation for the first 10 seconds because I was just stunned. So they asked me a few questions, you know, I told them what I knew, and you know, they asked me, if he had said anything unusual or did anything unusual, what he had with him and stuff like that. The family lost their father. A wife lost her husband. You know, he was trying to protect his family. So, you know, this person not only wanted to assassinate Donald Trump, he didn't care who else he hurt along the way. The chills thinking about who I was sitting next to. If he was that deranged, who knows what he would have done inside the range if he felt like it, you know. He could have shot us. So, you know, it was disturbing, to say the least. Well, I think it would have been a complete disaster. I mean, if that would have been successful, that would have thrown the entire election into chaos, thrown the country into chaos. Who knows what it would have ignited.
As authorities continue to search for a motive after a gunman tried to kill former President Donald Trump, President Biden addressed the nation this evening from the Oval Office, while Trump arrived in Milwaukee ahead of this week's Republican National Convention. ABC's Jay O'Brien has the details.
My fellow Americans. President Biden addressing the nation from the Oval Office just one day after a suspected gunman attempted to assassinate his rival, former President Donald Trump.
I want to speak to you tonight about the need for us to lower the temperature in our politics. And to remember, while we may disagree, we are not enemies. We must stand together.
The president calling for unity.
But in America, we resolve our differences at the battle box. You know, that's how we do it, at the battle box, not with bullets. The power to change America should always rest in the hands of the people, not in the hands of a would-be assassin.
Biden speaking with the former president Saturday evening, just hours after a gunman opened fire at a Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. That suspect identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel, Pennsylvania. Sources tell ABC News that a short time before the former president took to the podium, local authorities were alerted to suspicious activity on the outside of the perimeter and were in the process of looking for a suspect.
I am aware that law enforcement had responded to a number of reports of suspicious activity.
Investigators are now trying to figure out how that gunman made it up onto the roof as Republicans get set to gather for this week's convention in Milwaukee. Former President Trump arriving, preparing to formally accept his party's nomination. The convention going ahead as planned, but security at the Fiserv Forum is tight.
We are confident in these security plans that are in place for this event, and we're ready to go.
In a post on social media, former President Trump said he considered pushing this convention back 2 days, but then said he didn't want to have a potential assassin force a change of his campaign schedule. Now, security is tight here in Milwaukee, but the Secret Service says there is no credible threat to this convention. In Milwaukee, Jay O'Brien, ABC News.
And then the guy with the AK-47 and the scream mask approached the perimeter, and thankfully they're taking him aside for some conversations. Now, we missed the it's my fault because I had
jump back to that.
Well, I'm going to put it in the next block. So I queued it up in the next block so we have time code for the Cory Mills. It's because Sky News covered the CNN meltdown that I missed it, and I directed LD to like cut to the next block because there's a lot of clips tonight, and if we don't trim the fat, then it goes into like Wednesday. So we got to like stay on. I need certain pieces of evidence introduced into the record at a certain time so that the audience can stack those up in an order that makes sense and actually have an understanding and be able to draw conclusions that are different than what the herd signals are telling people to do. Real quick, did you have any opinings on that, Scott?
Well, just right at the end, I got distracted because I thought he said he was speaking at Pfizer Forum, and I was like, what is this? There's a Pfizer Forum. I guess I looked it up, and it's a Fiserv, Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee, yeah. I guess. Yeah, okay. So anyway, yeah. Kind of caught me off guard. But yeah, the battle box thing that was going around, like we settled this at the battle box. The battle box. Like he doubled down on it. It's like, okay, the battle box, huh? Okay.
Yeah, those battle box clips last week were hilarious. And then the Matt Orfalea, that was all about the battle box. That was the title of the video, I'm pretty sure. Now, I saw in that Sun, whatever the Sun is, a newspaper that makes videos now, in that interview with that guy who was in the class with the alleged shooter. That was interesting. And I saw LD say, Keystone Shooting Center, you don't say. And now I'm going to ask you, LD, I've seen a George Webb video 6 hours ago where he was outside the Keystone Shooting Center and he was elaborating how it's like a 1,800 acre complex, the only place that crooks could have trained for long range shooting. And it's used by like DHS and Secret Service and ATF and other federal agencies. Well, so what do you got?
Well, the interesting thing is I never heard George mention that Keystone Shooting Center. I heard him talking to me about the Clareton Sportsman's Club.
You might be right. I might have those.
But that's
look up my reference here. I think you're more likely right.
It's interesting that the story is reporting that place and not about Clareton.
Interesting. Where did Clareton come into the picture?
That.
Is it like just ranges around where that guy lived? And George was like, going around. He's like, this one has indoor pistol. This one has indoor shooting up to 100 yards. If he wanted to practice, this is the closest one. Or did he have a lead? I haven't followed his work, but George Webb and Peter Duke made the trip. They've had boots on the ground the past week and they've been filming stuff. I just haven't caught up with their publications yet. So I thought maybe you had.
Yeah, he was talking about Clareton. I'd have to dig up
Keystone.
The connection, or if he was actually shooting there. I believe so. That's where he was talking about it. But
so I stand corrected. I do remember George. He's in front of that wood sign, so it is Clarendon. So what I said went on.
He was in front of
that one, and
he was in front
Keystone.
of Allegheny Arms Gunworks, which is where the guy was supposedly had bought ammunition. And then Clareton. I'll try to find a link about him shooting there.
I might have had it because I watched it earlier. Maybe I just did. I'll go to my history to find it because I didn't save it to the playlist. But for those guys, for those of you who are in the audience, doesn't have to be just guys. You guys do know that there is such a thing as the GTW production playlist. Every clip that I consider for the show from at least YouTube goes in this playlist. And so if there's clips you want to see in their entirety, members should have this link. It's in the community. And if you guys have trouble finding it, we could talk about it this Tuesday at Town Hall. So let me just say it that way. All right. So now we're going to go back into it. We're going to pick up the Cory clip. And then we're going to go to here. They tried to tie this assassination attempt in with Iran. I'm just going to put that clip on the record real quick. Whistleblowers allege understaffed United States Secret Service. These are whistleblowers. New gunman or how gunman got on the roof, according to CNN. And then official story doesn't make sense. Jimmy Dore, many other people we're going to clip out tonight. They're going to show you there's 10 ways from Sunday that this doesn't make sense. So we're going to take in some of those perspectives and preserve them in this important time capsule. So unlike my 20-hour JFK 50th anniversary episode, you don't have to wait 50 years to get the good evidence. We can just put it in the time capsule now as it's happening. And let's go to this block, and then we'll be right back to chop it up.
Good afternoon. I'm Lindsay Reiser. Thanks for joining us here on CBS News 24/7. CBS News has learned U.S. intelligence officials detected an Iranian plot against former President Donald Trump. Two officials confirmed they found out about the threat recently, and it was shared before Trump's rally in Pennsylvania on Saturday. But there's no information suggesting the threat was connected to the attempted assassination over the weekend. Let's bring in CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd. She formerly served as the Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism and Threat Prevention for the Department of Homeland Security in the Biden administration. So, Sam, what do we know about this threat, and why is Trump a target?
Well, Lindsay, I am unsurprised by reporting that there have been additional Iranian threats to Mr. Trump. During my time at the Department of Homeland Security, I worked with the U.S. Secret Service and others to review threats facing protectees, U.S. Secret Service protectees. And based upon Mr. Trump and his cabinet's decision to engage in the assassination of an individual named Qasem Soleimani, who was the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, an entity that conducted terror attacks and supported terror attacks around the world. The Iranian regime vowed to avenge that assassination, and there have been an ongoing series of threats to Mr. Trump and specific members of his administration when they were in office and since they left office, Lindsay.
Do we know of any new threats against other Trump administration era officials?
The U.S. Secret Service has not disclosed that, but it is important to note that the U.S. Secret Service is not responsible for providing protection for anyone other than Mr. Trump and his immediate family after they left office. However, the U.S. Secret Service did continue protection for certain Trump administration officials after they left office, including National Security Advisor John Bolton, for a time Secretary of the Treasury Steve Mnuchin, and National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien. So I can tell you from experience working alongside the U.S. Secret Service and the intelligence community, they consistently evaluate for new threat information and have consistently over time adjusted their operational posture for protectees in light of that specific new threat information.
So the Secret Service sent us a statement saying they're constantly reviewing new potential threats and adjusting resources as needed and can't comment further. But given what you know about how this department works, you said yourself you're not surprised to hear of this news, that it was long thought, long assumed that Iran would at some point try and retaliate against the assassination of Soleimani. Do you think the Secret Service would adjust their posture here?
Well, according to the reporting, the Secret Service did adjust their posture in light of this latest reporting. But again, this latest reported threat from Iran against Mr. Trump is just the latest in an ongoing set of threats to Mr. Trump and Trump administration officials in light of the assassination of Qasem Soleimani and their larger policy against Iran. The Secret Service protection mission is twofold. They have an intelligence mission where, again, they work with members of the intelligence community to receive new intelligence and learn more about any threats affecting their protectees. And then when new threat information is received, they incorporate that into adjusted operational planning.
What do you think the public should know about this? I mean, obviously, this is another world power here, one that is often considered someone we are at odds with, a country we are at odds with, and a regime we are at odds with. What is your biggest takeaway for people at home?
My biggest takeaway, I have two, if you don't mind, Lindsay. The first is that the Iranian regime is engaged in efforts to harm U.S. citizens, including government officials, both here in the U.S. as well as abroad, and remains a huge threat to the American people more generally. And number two, that the U.S. Secret Service does evaluate threat information as it becomes available and adjusts their operational posture.
We had mentioned no indication right now that this threat is in relation at all to the horrific events of Saturday. But what are some questions that would be asked, and would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, sure. I think that when we think about what the U.S. Secret Service is doing for their protectees, someone like Mr. Trump, their job from an intelligence perspective is to review the range of threats affecting the former president. So that's threats from countries like Iran, Russia, China, as well as threats from individuals within our borders. That may be folks known as domestic violent extremists, as well as individuals inspired by foreign terrorist organizations who live here. And it is part of the Secret Service's mission to ensure that they have the deepest intelligence picture possible.
And we continue to follow the latest here in Trump's attempted assassination. We are getting big breaking news here on this Friday. This is all according to Senator Josh Hawley. He has whistleblowers coming to him that detail most of Trump's security detail working the event last Saturday were not even Secret Service. Again, were not even Secret Service. DHS assigned unprepared and inexperienced personnel. So this is the letter right now that Senator Josh Hawley just put out to the Department of Homeland Security, saying, I write to raise concerns brought to me by whistleblowers about your department's stunning failure to protect former President Trump on July 13th, 2024. As Secretary of Homeland Security, you are ultimately responsible for your agency and its components, including the U.S. Secret Service. Whistleblowers who have direct knowledge of the event have approached my office according to the allegations. The July 13th rally was considered to be a loose security event. For example, detection canines were not used to monitor entry and detect threats in the usual manner. Individuals without proper destinations were able to gain access to backstage areas. Department personnel did not appropriately police the security buffer around the podium and were also not stationed at regular intervals around the event's security perimeter. In addition, whistleblower allegations suggest the majority of DHS officials were not, in fact, Secret Service agents, but instead drawn from the department's Homeland Security investigations. This is especially concerning given that these security investigators were unfamiliar with standard protocols typically used at these types of events, according to the allegations. As a member of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, which has oversight jurisdiction over your department, I will continue to investigate your department's role in the staggering security failures on July 13th. Unfortunately, your department has not been appropriately forthcoming with members of Congress, abruptly ending the only call with the Secret Service before senators could even ask a question. This is completely unacceptable and contrary to the public's interest in transparency. Instead, we have learned more from whistleblowers than your department's officials. I will continue to protect the confidentiality of all who contact my office and ensure that they receive the full protections under the law to which they are entitled, so that my office can continue its investigation into the events of July 13th, 2024. Please provide the following information no later than 7 days from now. Number one, how did DHS determine to staff the event, including any decision to rely on state or local officers? Number two, what percentage of the DHS agents at the event were from HSI rather than the Secret Service? Were a majority of officers at the event drawn from HSI or other DHS components rather than Secret Service? If so, why? Were HSI agents properly trained in staffing these types of events? Did gaps exist in the security perimeter, and were the usual protocols followed for the use of canines and magnetometers? Were agents not appropriately stationed around the podium? Were the standard protocols followed for issuing designated pins to vetted personnel that are allowed backstage? How long did agents physically spend on the ground surveying the site before the event? Did any paperwork obligations prevent a longer and more robust site survey? I await your response. Again, that's Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri with these big whistleblower allegations that have come forward to Senator Hawley. And now this continues to be a major story here, and just really the complete breakdown of security protocols for the former president, Donald Trump. And we will continue to follow really every aspect of this story because it's such a big one. He almost lost his life, and it looks like now from these whistleblowers, they did not have the correct staff for Donald Trump that day. And that is a complete breakdown. And every day it seems something new comes up in this investigation because, well, we haven't got the full story just yet. Secret Service still not giving those updates in a timely fashion.
We've got new information on the investigation into the shooter as well. CNN Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst John Miller is with us now. Great to see you this morning, John.
You too.
What are you learning? What's the latest here?
So the investigation moves forward a little bit every day. Let's kind of go through where they are as of right now. Interesting facts. The suspect late last week told his employers at the assisted care place where he works as a dietary specialist, I need Saturday off.
Premeditation.
That's right. I have something to do that day, but I'll be in on Sunday. I don't know if that was just to cover, not take attention away from that, I'll be in on Sunday, or now we look at mindset, did he expect to survive and escape? The other question that was swirling around for so long, and we've all heard this, even on our own air, is how did he get on that rooftop? We know he purchased a 5-foot ladder that morning, Saturday, at 9 a.m. at Home Depot near his house. That ladder has never been found to date. But the investigation has developed that he climbed up onto an air conditioner handler, and you can see that they're all around these buildings, and then hoisted himself onto a very low roof that's in the center of that complex, almost kind of in a courtyard, which would have been away from the view of a lot of people. Before that, and this is interesting, he had already attracted the attention of security people at the screening area for the rally. He had been walking by the magnetometers with a rangefinder in his hand. Now, a rangefinder is something that shooters use to measure the distance in long shots. Golfers use them too. Looks like a small pair of binoculars, but if you're a police officer or someone who knows about firearms, you'll know what that is when you see it. He was carrying it in his hand and kind of circling around the mag area. There's conflicting information as to whether he went through the mags, which means he was unarmed, but he had this in his hand and had to go through screening, or whether he just stayed outside, but they started looking at him. But then he leaves the area and, goes out of view from that inner perimeter. So that is just interesting that he was already on the radar a little bit, which happens often in these things. They look at somebody, then they leave the secure area. The rangefinder comes up again, though, because as he gets to that roof, they see him looking through the rangefinder And one sniper team is looking at him, looking at them through the rangefinder. But this all now starts to happen very quickly because now a police officer's coming up the ladder behind him. We know about that confrontation with the firearm. Then he comes up and, fires that shot. Those sniper teams are trying to determine and talking to each other about who is this guy? Is he law enforcement? Is he part of one of the other sniper teams that's supposed to be in that building? And then that first shot fires, and then everything goes very quickly. So we're learning kind of a lot about those moments leading up to it.
And every second there counts. John Miller, great to see you this morning. Thank you very much. Sarah?
It's fascinating reporting. Thank you, John. All right. The man who was shot and killed at Saturday's rally, Cory Mills, was honored at the RNC with a standing ovation last night. He died trying to shield his family from the bullets.
Hey, I'll see you on tour in Las Vegas, Chicago, and Grand Rapids. In Chicago, it's stand-up and a live panel show. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and make sure you go to jimmydore.com. The official story about the shooter, Matt Walsh tweets this out. He says, a random 20-year-old acting completely alone walked within 150 yards of a presidential campaign rally with a rifle. Climbed onto a rooftop in full view of Secret Service snipers, set up his shot and fired without anyone intervening and with no help from anyone. Also, everybody, all the regular people there for the rally saw the guy minutes before it happened and were screaming for the cops. There was reports in the AP that a cop climbed up that ladder, saw him, and then climbed back down. Why wouldn't you, first of all, if the cop sees a shooter on a roof, aren't you supposed to go code red, get the president off the stage into your radio? It's two, why wouldn't you pull your gun out and shoot that guy? Why would you climb back down the ladder and leave the guy up there to shoot the president? This 20-year-old is also so politically radical as to attempt an assassination and yet not radical enough to have ever posted any political writings or commentary on any social media site ever in his life. So Kurt was saying this sounds like MK Ultra. Like this sounds like something they got to him. This was the first thing I said. I said they found some mental defective and they encouraged him to do something he normally wouldn't do. And Kurt went the extra mile and said it was MK Ultra style mind control stuff. I'm sure they only did the MK Ultra mind control from the 50s to the 70s. I'm sure they stopped. He also wrote no manifesto and left behind no indication about why he did it. The perfect patsy. His last and only political act before attempting to kill the Republican candidate was to register as a Republican. You must believe this and ask no questions about it, or else you are a conspiracy theorist. And one thing we know about assassination attempts is that there's never any conspiring involved. He also tried to join his school's rifle club, but his aim was so bad, he hit one wall instead of the one with the target. So yeah, definitely the man to attempt a hit job. So people were saying there was somebody probably in that tree. Who knows? Who knows? It was definitely an inside job, or at least there was an inside component to it. This kid had no social media, was able to put up a ladder at the only roof that was uncovered. I think there was a permanent ladder connected to this building. I can't confirm that. Can you check that out? Okay. See if that was... He was able to climb the roof, and someone said he jumped from several different roofs. Remember that eyewitness account we showed you yesterday? Was able to put up a ladder, the only roof that was uncovered. Was able to climb the roof and set up for over 3 minutes. 3 minutes, and was able to get 6 shots off. I heard between 5 and 8, so I don't know about those numbers. But let's look at this. So here's where Trump is speaking. Here's where the guy was. Well, here's a water tower right there. When we saw this, first thing we said was, why didn't they have Secret Service up in this water tower so they could oversee all these buildings? And there's only a handful of buildings. Like, why wouldn't you have Secret Service on every one of them? Oh, by the way, they also took Secret Service away from Donald Trump that day to send them where? To a Jill Biden event. Because she was in the neighborhood. What? This wasn't Donald Trump's regular Secret Service detail because they had been overworked. So they replaced them with these people. They also took away some or a lot of his Secret Service to send them to a Jill Biden event. What a weird coinky dink. So, and they didn't put anybody in that tower. Why wouldn't that be the first place you put somebody? They could see everything. So here's where the Secret Service snipers were. Here's where the shooter was. Here's where Trump was. So, super suspect. It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. At all. How convenient. They found a guy who had no social media presence, had no manifesto, no nothing.
Good.
That's something.
It's almost like they needed to put the wind up in action before they had a chance to like flesh out the wind up history of why the wind up would do that thing, right? A wind up is like an MK Ultra type victim where they can wind someone up like Sirhan Sirhan or Mark David Chapman or John Hinckley Jr. or any number of people over the years that seem to have been programmed by MK Ultra doctors working for the CIA and MI6. So that's what I mean by wind up. They're like wind up toys. They used to have these toys back in the early days of the 20th century, and they had a key, and the key goes in the back of the toy, and you wind it up, and it's spring based, and it would do its little thing until you needed to wind it up again. When they need, like, they're not going to put their own jackal there on the roof. You need a patsy. In order to have a patsy, like go back to last week's recommendation for the parallax view, how the establishment can easily and systematically make patsies and have plausible deniability, and every step of the way it's their agenda investigated by them and nothing to see here. They made movies about it 50 years ago, so it's plausible. Like, that's still going on today, just like a lot of those other things. In there, we also had a couple other pieces of critical information. Some of that stuff about Iran. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure they want to tie that to something that they want to get a budget for, right? Did we get that clip with Cory Mills in yet, LD? Did I miss that somehow in the last block?
I'll pull that up again if you want.
Right. Yeah, let's pull it up. Let's just watch it right now because it doesn't take that long for her to be so incredulous and cut him off.
Oh wait,
but then,
put it.
Yeah,
you put it.
It was at the beginning of the last block. It just said queued up because I put the time code in it, so it starts halfway through that Sky News clip. But it's also interesting to see another country's news people like tear up this country's news reporting. I'm like, why do you care? Sky News in Australia, but they do because they're funded by Rupert Murdoch and. You know, it's a globalist operation and whatnot. Do you have that, or do you need me to send that link through?
I'm pulling it up again.
I got it.
Yeah, I got it here.
All right, cool. All right, let's go. This is Representative Cory Mills, a former professional sniper who's done thousands of these types of events. Oh, let's let him tell you.
CNN host freaked out at the concept that all avenues need to be investigated. Let's just play a little bit more.
As a military member, one of the things that we do is we what if scenario everything in the world, right? That's
I know, but I don't know. I'm just saying, if it's the what if that you talk about maybe in an investigation, and the what if that you are presenting on live television. I don't know. It's just.
Well, so listen, I'm a public official.
Yes.
Anything that I do, anything that I say in the public. I don't try and hide it in private. I think that the American people need transparency, accountability, and accessibility to the elected officials, not to try and hide behind what we want to look at. And I also think that if the American people know that we're questioning these things as well, it puts them at rest to at least know, why aren't they at least looking into this? Why? We should look at every single situation which is of this significance. We should look at it from multiple angles to ensure that nothing is left out, nothing could be potentially claimed as being covered up. Yeah. We need to have more transparency to the American people, and I think that's what everyone deserves.
Brad, what's your reaction to this?
Well, it's really quite something to watch.
We don't need Brad's reaction. We have our own reactions. So I think it's pretty remarkable. Cory Mills has an interesting history, and he's done thousands of those types of protection security details, and he could instantly spot that there's something wrong. And CNN's like, but you're ruining our narrative. You can't say that. And he's like, I don't care. I'm untouchable. He's in public office. He's kind of got the same attitude as some of a few of the other people, Congress critters out there, who are actually like Thomas Massie speaking up for the people who aren't being represented by the deep state. Somebody's got to speak up. So Cory Mills getting on the record there. All right, now we're getting busy with it because we're going to get to the Secret Service director talking about the slopey roof, and you're going to see how not slopey the roof is. So methinks thou doth protest too much, and there might be more to see to this. The people bringing you the lone gunman story, the story sucks, and I don't believe the people that are telling us the reasons why there were no people on that roof. Right? She could have just easily said, we didn't have enough people. But to be like, oh, we made the decision that the roof was too slopey, it's like, there's something. There's probably smoke and fire there. Also, we have aerial photos revealing stunning Secret Service failure. That's a Breaking Points video we're going to see. Also, coming up, you're going to see how the alleged lone gunman dude did drone surveillance of the site on the day of when it's secured by Secret Service. So, here's an example. Donald Trump lives in Mar-a-Lago. He's a former president of the United States. Mar-a-Lago has a 30-mile no-fly zone enforced so strictly that Donald Trump Jr. was trying to fly a drone on the beach, and the Secret Service busted the former president's son and said, you can't do that. So if that's security around the former president's house is that strict, why would you let this suspicious guy run pre-programmed drone flights over looking for his shooting perch? Allegedly, that's how this is planned out. But we'll have to actually look at the facts and discover what happened to see what the actual plan was. So let's go step by step. We're going to get aerial photos revealing a stunning failure. Again, I want you, every time you see a graphic of where the shooter was, I want you to ask yourself, is that what the evidence depicts in reality where the shooter was? Or is this a cunning attempt to trick you? Are they trying to use the fallacy of red herring? Let's sweep this across. If you believe this graphic, then you'll never really figure it out, right? If you don't challenge this graphic, you're never going to figure it out. So we'll go to Breaking Points, to CNN, and then back to Sky News Australia, because the shock of the sloped roof excuse is even noticed across the world's largest ocean down in Australia. All right, so let's go to it, and we're going to start with Breaking Points.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have a great show for everybody today. Unfortunately, a couple of things. Crystal, actually, one of her kids is sick, and she's not able to make it this morning. It was an emergency, so I'll be holding down the fort. Luckily, I do have some practice at this point. Now, of course, we have full spectrum coverage here at Breaking Points this morning of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump at his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday. We brought you two breaking news segments over the weekend, breaking some of that down, but we're going to go a full through the timeline of the events, some of the fallout, what we know about the shooter so far, the FBI investigation, President Biden's response. We'll then dissect exactly what we know about the Secret Service's colossal failure here in preventing this attempted assassination, some of the holes that have opened up, and some of the background also into the problems inside of this agency that are now glaringly revealed after this incident. We're going to talk a little bit about President Biden and his political future. His political future appears saved, more so now by the attempted assassination and some of the news coverage and some of the planning going on now behind the scenes by the Democratic Party, how they think that they can weather this and perhaps go all the way to Election Day without more calls from elected officials calling on Biden to drop out. We're going to give everybody a preview of the RNC, which of course kicks off today and will go all the way to Thursday. Some news about Donald Trump and the speech that he's given, and about also some changes that he's made to that speech in the wake of his shooting, how he's feeling exactly, and how this will change the presidential election race going into 2024. We'll finally end the segment on a funny note. Somebody who you saw very recently here on this program, the advisor to Democratic billionaire megadonor Reid Hoffman, has apparently been caught in the immediate aftermath of the shooting, who you saw in our Counterpoints debate against Cenk Uygur about Biden staying in the race. Well, he apparently was caught telling journalists in the hours after the attempted assassination that the entire thing was apparently staged. So a real view into the Democratic elite mind and some of the conspiracies that harbor there. As we said at the top, this is a full spectrum Breaking Points coverage. Thank you to everybody, our premium subscribers, who enable us to be able to put out that breaking news coverage and to continue doing the show here every day. Our own Emily Jashinsky is on the ground at the RNC, so throughout the week we'll check in with her about what's going on. She'll be doing interviews and other things. And then don't forget, we also, the entire crew, will be on the ground for the DNC, which is in August in Chicago. So thank you to all of our premium members. You're the guys who enable us to continue doing this work. Let's start with the attempted assassination on Donald Trump, and I'll try and just start at the very beginning of the incident. So let's go ahead and play some of the video here. This was in Butler, Pennsylvania, approximately 6:15 p.m. You saw Trump. He was in the middle of his speech, only 5 minutes or so. Immediately, you see shots begin to ring out, and Secret Service agents who jump immediately on top of the president. The most striking things is that you can see the incredible confusion going on behind Donald Trump. And unfortunately, that heartbreaking scream that you hear in the background is people realizing that an innocent bystander, just a normal person who woke up on Saturday, he was excited to go to the former president's rally, lost his life, and was shot. ER doctor who was on the scene said that he was shot in the head, and almost certainly a fatality immediately after it happened. We know a little bit more about that individual, and I'll bring you some news about him. But what you're watching, obviously, is just an incredibly chaotic scene. You have these Secret Service agents. We can actually hear them on the microphone that is being picked up there, where they're saying, "Get down, get down." Then they realize that the shooter is down. They say that the threat has been neutralized. As Trump begins to rise, they bring him up and they surround him and create a barrier with their own bodies around the former president. One of them is actually checking him for wounds while he is standing there. Trump obviously is he's a little bit confused in the immediate moment, but then he says, "Wait, wait, wait." And that is one of the most iconic moments where he shouts, "Fight, fight, fight," to the crowd, puts his fist up, also creating that iconic image that we have now all probably seen over the weekend, where you can see the Associated Press photographer was right below him and was able to capture Trump with his fist in the air, blood on his face, and the American flag flying high in the background as he is rushed to his vehicle. Let's go to the next part here as well. Put that image, please, up on the screen. This is where a lot of the questions now are centering. What the hell happened here with this response from law enforcement? So what you can see directly in front of you, this is a map that's been put together. You can see the stage where Donald Trump was speaking in Butler, Pennsylvania. You can also see where the wounded rally attendee was sitting. You can see behind where the law enforcement counter snipers were positioned on the rooftop. There's been a lot of discussion around the actions of those counter snipers. But then over to the left on that building rooftop was the location of the gunman's body. So there's a lot of questions here about how exactly a gunman is able to walk on to a rooftop with a direct line of sight to former President Donald Trump. He's able not only to walk onto the rooftop, he's able to get into the prone firing position and then able to squeeze off some 7 to 8 shots at the former president. Let's go and put the next graphic up, please. That is also very helpful in kind of discovering what happened here. This shows you actually on the ground image, and also realizes just how close that this individual was able to get. We're talking about 130 yards that this individual is able to get from the former president, and one of the most obvious and direct lines of sight. Now, there's big discussions here about the failures of the Secret Service, but I think that image actually puts everything together quite well. You could see exactly where the shooter was, you could see where the Secret Service snipers were, and you can also see where Donald Trump was there on the stage. And unfortunately, in the path of that assassin's bullet, an innocent bystander was hit in the head while he was covering his own family. Just absolutely tragic in the results that have happened here. What I think that this image underscores most for us is the failure and some shocking questions that now have to be asked of the Secret Service and how exactly they allowed something like this to happen. Everything that we're beginning to learn now behind the scenes points to absolutely colossal incompetence. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen in terms of what we know about the shooter. They've released his name. The individual's name here is Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, about a 40-minute drive from the Butler, Pennsylvania rally where Donald Trump was attending.
We're learning shocking new details about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump over the weekend. A Secret Service spokesman tells CNN that agents did not personally sweep the building where the gunman was perched at Saturday's rally. A source says one of two local counter snipers was supposed to be covering that very building. The Pennsylvania State Police says they were not responsible for that area. The head of the Secret Service, we should know, Kimberly Cheadle, announced this morning that the agency will fully participate in the independent review announced by President Biden, and a senior law enforcement official says the gunman, who was identified as 20-year-old Thomas Crooks, bought 50 rounds of ammo just before that rally. Meanwhile, new video highlights the moments leading up to the shooting. The crowd saw the shooter on the roof and appeared to be getting into position while the former president was talking about immigration to the crowd. Take a listen to what happened next.
Yeah, look, there he is. Because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people, criminals. We have criminals. We have drug dealers. We have people that should not be here. On the roof. It's much tougher than it happens. You went on the roof again.
Let's bring in CNN law enforcement analyst Whitney Wild and CNN chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst John Miller. Whitney, let me go to you first. Do we have an answer from the Secret Service as to why they did not sweep this building? I've covered so many rallies over the years, and these outdoor rallies in particular are very worrisome. And one has to think that that's standard operating procedure, that they would sweep this building.
So here's how this perimeter worked. This building was outside of the perimeter. So our understanding is that the Secret Service, that agency, did not sweep that building, but instead they left that to local law enforcement. So when you consider how perimeters are built out, there are basically concentric circles of responsibility here. So there's sort of a first line and a second line. And in this case, the Secret Service had deferred to the security of that building to local law enforcement. Ultimately, though, the Secret Service is responsible for the totality of that incident. Again, as you pointed out, a source tells CNN that a local counter sniper team was responsible for covering that building. Additionally, I have been told that that building was considered a post. And what that means is that somebody was supposed to be there. Who that person is, we don't know yet. And as I've been talking to other sources about how this would work, there are sort of two scenarios here. So there's a scenario where you
have a sloped roof is going to prevent you from doing so. Okay, let's go ahead and weigh that out for a moment. So you couldn't have put a patrol car that's locked with the lights on in the parking lot of AGR to be a deterrent. You couldn't have put someone on the ground to ensure there's no permissible climbing environment to get them onto the rooftop. They were there for 26 minutes is what was reported. Two different people who were attending the rally took photos and sent it to the law enforcement officer. And the law enforcement officer said that when he came onto the roof, that the gentleman had the assassin, would-be assassin, pointed his rifle at him. Why would you not have an emergency comms channel through your coordination with the Secret Service to yell, shooter on the roof, shooter on the roof, shooter on the roof, have your Secret Service detail come immediately, take the president, get him off the stage, and then allow your counter sniper team to then mitigate the threat?
And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened. Old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Go ahead, pull it. I don't really understand why those news channels just don't have someone read it while they put the text on screen. It'd be so much better for people who are trying to use that clip in a podcast, so you don't have to like get people to their device and like start reading stuff. Now, out of that, you heard Cheadle say that she's going to be open to investigation and share and be forthright. I'm going to show you two clips in a little bit. Show quite the opposite, that she ran away from senators at the RNC, and then she avoided the hearings for the Congress and Senate and whatever else is going on in the Congress critters corner of DC in investigation land. Scott, what did you think of the things we just put on the record there? Any that strike you as unusual?
I mean, it's all unusual. I mean, really, the sloped roof thing is just really I have no explanation for it. It's like there couldn't possibly have been a worse excuse, you know, and to secure the building from the inside, maybe they heard somebody walking around on the roof. I mean, I don't know, man. I can't possibly conceive of a worse explanation. I could think, let me just think off the top of my head, like maybe it was too hot. Maybe the metal was too hot and we couldn't put people up there because of concern that they might get burned. That would be a million times better than a sloped roof. That was the first thing that came to my mind. You know what I mean? Like,
obviously they didn't tell her what to say, and that's what happens if you let her go without a teleprompter.
There you go. Exactly. And so that tells you a lot about who they have in charge in the first place. And like, wasn't her previous qualification for that was that she worked security for Pepsi or Nabisco or something like that?
She guarded kids' school lunch items.
Yeah, exactly. So that makes you definitely a candidate. Like,
bags
not even
chip,
from
bottles
Secret
of
Service.
soda.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go.
That's public school indoctrination for you too. That's what they consider lunch.
Yeah,
right?
She went from Cheetos to the actual orange man, dude. Went from orange fingers to the actual orange man.
PepsiCo looking good right now for being on her resume. Maybe she might want to call them back. It's like that scene in Top Gun. Like, hey, do you still have that truck driver school thing? We might need that. You know, might not work out as pilots after you just did the flyby and got yelled at. Anyway, if you watch Top Gun again at some point, don't go watch it just for this, but you'll see when he upends the tray that there's a Pepsi logo on the bottom, and it's a subliminal ad for Pepsi that went on back then. And they did like a study, and like sales of soda in the theaters went up after they did that, and it encouraged them to do more stuff like that. They might still be doing stuff like that, is what I'm saying. So go back and watch a good old 1986 movie and see it in slow motion.
This might all just be a plot by Coca-Cola to like sabotage Pepsi, dude.
Dude, I always thought they were owned by the same people back in the 80s when they had the cola wars. I'm like, wouldn't it be interesting if they were owned by the same people? And then you find out how stocks work, and Blackstone of the day back then owned both companies. I forget what the holding company was, but it's like that whole system that they created extrapolates like as an example. If you or I start a company, it's worth X amount of dollars. But if we take it public, it's now worth this. And now you're in the game over here and you got to play the game. Otherwise you don't get all that artificial wealth that they just made up out of nothing. Here it is, right? You have a $2 billion valuation, Vice TV, right? Or whatever was going on back in the day. These things are worth but are they still in business? No, Vice is out of business now. So that's why I used it as an example. It's like crash and burn, Mav. All right. More Top Gun references as we work through tonight's clips.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures. They're hosting videos. They're maybe even doing Q&As. And these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come